Hey everyone! Thank you for being here today with Pro Quality Community. My name is Alena and I'll be your host on this great event today. And we are going to talk about simple yet tricky thing, test cases, about examples of test cases types, pros and cons of each type, and so on. And we'll also mention approaches on how to choose the most appropriate one for your specific case. Please feel free to ask any questions via our YouTube chat, and we'll pick them later in the Q&A session, right in the end. So we are delighted to have Karyna, QA lead and functional testing program mentor for more than 3 years, with more than 12 mentees supervised so far. Karyna, hi.
Hello, hello.
Hello. So could you please tell us, why did you choose this specific topic to share with us today? And why do you think it is that much important?
Yeah, hi everyone. First of all, I want to say thank you, Alena, for the presentation and so wonderful words. And yeah, regarding the topic,
Welcome.
I choose this topic because I think that this topic is always relevant for every K engineer during his working routine. During my working experience as QA engineer on the projects and mentoring programs, I got a lot of practical experience, useful tips and tricks, which I want to share with you. And I think that we can start.
Sounds great. Thank you. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. So let's make the quick overview of the structure for today's session. We'll start from the types of test cases which often used on projects, provide pluses and minuses for each approach, provide examples. Next part, test cases which are mostly used in automation. And during class part, I plan to share tips which usually I used during test case management system selection and organization. So let's start from the first topic, types of test cases, test documentations. And first type is checklist. Checklist is a list of all the things that you need to verify during story testing. Checklist is help to you to track the progress of your activities. So about the usage of the checklists. Checklists are usually used on the next situations for smoke testing, as a list of summaries for test cases, on projects where deep test documentation is not required, on projects where only one key specialist exists and team extension is not planned. So, checklist as a test cases type has some pros and cons. Let's start from the pros. Checklist creation process are not required much time. Also, this type can help you to analyze the high level of business logic of the app or user story. And the last pros which I can mention that checklist is give us the flexibility of passing them. So now let's analyze the cons of checklists. At first, it isn't easy to use them for the onboarding process for newcomer on the project. Second, there are no possibility to track all steps during the passing. Checklists are not reusable for automation perspective. And last, there are no traceability requirement points for checklists. On your screen, you can see the easiest example of the checklist. Let's imagine that I need to verify the input functionality in ChatGPT. Usually, I use next parameters for the checklist: number of checks, module area, test case summary, or it can be named like points for checks, of course, priority, and the result of the check. So I think that's mostly all about the checklists. And we continue to the next test case type. And second type is the test cases itself. Test case is an instruction for testers which helps to ensure us that program performed properly. Usually, test cases are used for the describing of small pieces of the functionality. About the test case usage. Test cases are usually used in next situations for UI elements testing, for backend testing, for new feature testing, for regression testing, for extended testing, for testing functionalities with difficult logic. So, what about the pluses and minuses of this testing cases approach? Test cases can be used for the KT purposes for newcomers on the project. Also, test cases can be executed by person who is not familiar with business logic or by developers. Each test case has only one way of execution, and it helps to track the quality of app more in details. Test cases are usually used from the automation perspective. So, minuses of the test cases. Due to detailed description of the case, you need to create a lot of test cases to cover all possible ways of execution in the story. Also, these cases require more time for creation and reviewing and supporting them. For, for example, for supporting, for example, checklists took less time for that. So let's check the example of the test case. On screen, you can see the example of them. For instance, I need to verify, as in previous example, some input functionality in ChatGPT app. I cover one of the possible test cases of execution. Usually, I use next parameters for the test cases, numbers of checks, module area, priority, of course, test case summary, steps of execution and expected result for each steps and the result of the cases. So that's all about the test cases, and we continue with the next type. Third type is use cases. Also, um, they can be named as end-to-end cases. Use cases, it is an instructions for testers where usually describe end-to-end business flow. The usage of use cases. Use cases are usually used for the next purposes. Critical path testing, testing of microservices, for the new feature testing, for regression testing, for testing functionalities with simple logic. So what about pluses and minuses of this test documentation type? Let's start as usual from the pluses. Use cases approach can help to cover stories by small count of scenarios. Sometimes for non-complex stories, it is possible to cover all criteria by two scenarios, positive and negative. Using this approach, you can save your time for cases creation. Use cases are not consist of exact steps for checking, and it gives you the possibility to pass cases via different ways. Also, scenarios can be used from automation perspective with some additional updates. So, as usual, each test documentation tab has their minuses, and let's discuss minuses of use cases. Due to non-detailed description of the case, you can't delegate the execution for the guy who is not familiar with the business logic. Also, some elements which are not in focus of the end-to-end case can be missed. Usually, such approach is recommended for using projects where a team consists of high seniority level specialists. And as I said before, scenarios can be used for the automation, but more detailed description is required for the using of the case. So, as usual, the example of the test documentation type, and on the screen you can see the use case example. For instance, I need to verify some end-to-end flow, end-to-end case of input functionality in ChatGPT app. I cover one of them as usual. Usually for the creating and covering, I use next parameters for the use cases, end-to-end cases. Number of checks, priority, test scenario summary or name, steps of execution for this use case, and the expected result for the whole scenario, and result of the execution. So that's all about use cases test documentation, and we continue with the next test matrix type. It is the last type which we will discuss during this session for the from the manual tester perspective. This type of documentation are usually used for testing different test configurations for the same test, for example. As I said previously, is the main usage of this test documentation type to check like different setups of the application, different test data, and so on. Pluses and minuses of current approach. Pluses. Test matrix is not required much time for the creation. Also, you can make the check via different ways of execution. Minuses. It is not easy to execute the tests by person who is not familiar with the business logic of the application or user story. Also, it is not comfortable to use for the automation team. And it's difficult to track the way of execution. So, on your screens, you can see the example of possible test metrics for the testing. You can see the list of the functionality from the left side and the checks and the setup on the top. And the results for each of this setup for each functionality. So that's all about test metrics, and I think it's the right time to make a summary for the first part of this session. So most usable test cases types on projects are usually checklists, test cases, use cases or end-to-end cases, and test metrics. Each type is selected based on project needs. For example, you need to take into account team seniority level, team structure, team capacity, purpose of testing level. So it's all about our first part, and we continue with our second part. And the next topic is test documentation for the automation. And first of possible test documentation are test cases and use cases formulating using BDD approach. So generally, what is BDD? BDD is a behavior-driven development, and it is a software development process that encourages collaboration among developers, quality assurance experts, and customer representatives in the project. Gherkin language is used for such approach. Let's discuss the usage of this approach, the cases where this approach is using. BDD scenarios are used by KM team, can be used by K team instead of classical types of test cases, which we also these test scenarios can be created and used by manual testers. When we need to provide clear reason automation and development, it's easy to use such approach for the creating cases and scenarios. And sometimes customer wants using this approach. About pluses and minuses for the BDD approach. Start from the pluses. Results can be easily checked by manual testers if we use this approach in automation. Second plus, the scenarios can be prepared by manual testers also. And we have a clear vision of requirements for the automation team. The minuses of its current approach. Additional training are required for the manual testers for scenarios creation and supporting. Also, BDD library is full of different methods which we can use, and it can require a lot of time to learn them. Also, if manual testers are not enough skilled in BDD approach, it required more time for automation team to create the cases for automation, or can require more time for praising the existing cases. And what about the example? On the screen, you can see the example of the BDD scenario. So on the left side, you can see the common structure of the scenarios, which are written by using BDD approach. Each scenario or requirement or criteria um, must consist of three methods: given, when, then. And a per method is optional but can be used for the formulating. And on the right side, you can see the simple scenario for the verifying the input field in ChatGPT. If you want to make a request in a different language. So that's mostly all about the BDD approach, and we continue with the next. And next possible test documentation for the automation is the test cases which are described directly in the code without additional test documentation. So when we can use such approach, we can use them when the project doesn't have any manual testers, only automation team exist, and when team consists of high seniority level people, and it means that each specialist can read the code and understand the case. What about pluses and minuses? So the plus for this approach, it required work only for automation team. It means they not required additional work as creating the test documentation. Minuses of this approach. Results of the automation can be checked by manual testers without can be checked by manual testers without additional training. Also, there are no possibility to create disability between manual cases and automation cases, and there is no clear vision of automated scope. So let's summarize the chapter. All types of test documentation automation are required additional trainings and upskilling programs for the team for using them on the project. Also, each type is selected based on project needs and customer expectations. And we continue with our last topic for today. It's trips of work with test cases. So during test case management system selection, you need to understand your needs. First of all, you need to make the analysis. What is really important for test case organization in the current moment on your project? Usually, next capabilities are important in management systems. Traceability between requirements and test cases. Also, how is it comfortable to execute the test cases in the system? Is it easy to review and update them? Next point is regarding collecting the results, how it's easy and comfortable to do it. Also, I can add several more questions for the analysis, like is it possible to collect information about how many tests are executed per day by team or by tester, how many times this test run. Also now get the analysis about test distribution by companies and testing types. Also, during the test case management selection, after you find the answers on the previous questions, you need to choose the system. You can use next sources for the information. You can looking for the surveys about test management tools in your company or in the internet. Also, you can ask colleagues for the feedback or for the demo for some test management system in which you are interested in. And the last, what you need to understand during selecting the test case management system, you need to understand and take into account next parameters. Is this test case management system have some integration with systems which are you use on your project, for example, with Jira, with Confluence, and so on. Also, traceability capabilities are important. Reporting, cost of this test management system, usability of management system, and export and import functionalities. Now on the slide, you can see the most popular test case management systems. They are TestRail, Azure DevOps, KSpace, KTouch, X-Ray plugin for the Jira, Zephyr plugin for the Jira, and sometimes Excel is also used as a test case management system if we don't have any abilities to select another. That's all about the test management systems. And I think it's the right time to make the final overview about today's session. So there are no golden rules for selecting the best test cases type. Each test case type needs to be selected based on your project needs and capabilities. Automation has its own specifics. Need to align with team and customer about test cases format, and about expectations. And the right tool for test case management is really important for the team success. So I think it's the right time to get your questions. And yeah, thank you for attention. And yeah, it's time for the question now.
Okay, thank you, Karyna. Thank you so much for the presentation. That was very interesting view on this topic and quite insightful. And I think that our listeners definitely has got interesting things to think about later. And dear listeners, if you enjoyed the talk, please scan the QR code to rate our event and give Karyna a badge. Karyna, could you please switch to the next slide?
Mhm.
Yep, this one. So feel free to rate the event and share your comments. This will let us know that you like the event and we might prepare more on the same topics. And now we are starting the Q&A session. And dear listeners, if you haven't sent us your questions yet, that's a sign to do this right now. So let's see what questions we have so far. Okay, that's the first question. Thanks for the webinar. Do you have examples? How can we store each type of test documentation? For example, test cases are mostly stored in test management tools like TestRail. So what is your opinion or your experience on this?
Um, yeah, usually I used, unfortunately, I don't have a lot of experience with the test rail, but I mostly used and have ability to use the Zephyr plugin for the Jira and X-Ray plugin for the Jira. And based on my experience, X-Ray was more comfortable because it's give got gave me more capabilities to store it test cases based on the functionalities, and yeah, it will easily to manage and execute and create some test runs for the regression, smoke test, and so on.
Maybe any other ideas for other test cases types, like maybe
Um,
checklists for test metrics, maybe others.
mm, I think that the storage of the test scenarios will be pretty the same as the for test cases because we like to we can verify the engine scenario based on for the whole functionality. That's why, yeah, it can be somehow connected with parts of the test cases or parts of the functionality. Regarding the checklists, usually I started with link. Of course, they are created for the usually for created for the each story, and yeah, can be stored with test cases together as an initial plan for the test cases creation.
Okay, thank you for the answer. So, what other questions do we have? Uh-huh. Which one is used more often in projects, like test cases, use cases, or checklists? So maybe you have your experience and some general view, like talking with other colleagues, etc.
Yeah, thank you for the question. Based on my experience, I mostly use test cases for the verification process on the feature test doing the feature test, new feature testing, and smoke testing, regression testing. But if you more closely to the like production stage, uh, I prefer to use cases for the validation more because it helps us to understand the quality of the flow itself. Um, yeah, but yeah, and I used use cases on during my projects when I was a part of end-to-end testing team. That's why, yeah, as I said, yeah, during the presentation, all of this type is selected based on the needs of the project. Yeah, if you're mostly focused on that, like story creation validation, it's better to create these cases. If you more and closer to the production or to the URT, it's better to validate the integration and app itself by use cases.
Mm-hmm. I can turn scenarios imitating clients' behavior. So, yeah, that's usually a good point. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, good. Next question. What about preconditions for test cases? Um, okay, maybe something not covered in the detail as expected by like the person who asked this question, but let us try to define how often do you use it? How valuable is it?
Yeah, generally, I can say that preconditions in these cases is yeah, it's often used, but if you yeah have an ability to manage it via some test case management system, it's better to write precondition in the one, for example, ticket, and linked with the other test cases where this precondition is actual. It can save your time during test cases updating because yeah, we know when our application become huger and huger and more test cases exist, it's better yeah to start the condition in the one place and other cases in another place. Yeah, to not ma- to not make some unclear vision of the test case.
It might be also helpful to group test cases by preconditions,
Also,
etc.
yeah.
Good point. Yeah, thank you. So, and the next question: why checklists are not suitable for test automation engineers if they are aware of the business logic and are not new for the project?
Um, yeah, regarding the checklist question, yeah, thank you for that question. It's not suitable for automation because, for example, I'm a security lead. I gave the scope for the automation that I need, for example, automate the smoke. But uh, if I send them checklist with ideas what I need to automate, they can automate it in a wrong way, which I'm not expected. They can cover the scenarios which are not very critical for our app, and we can lose the time based on that. That's why it's yeah better to provide our automation team clear cases and scenarios which we want to see, to track the results and yeah in general to understand, get them understanding what they exactly need to do.
Yeah, agreed. Thank you. I think that's a good question. And next one. I didn't really get the difference between test case and use case. Could you please elaborate a bit more on that?
Yeah, sure. So the main difference between test cases and use cases, that test cases is something which we describe more deeper, mm, about more some elements like I want to make a search action on the some online store. I in the test case I will write like open the website, navigate to the like home page, click on the search field, make some input, click on the search button. If it will be a use case, I can like skip some details on which place I want to do this search. And generally, I can say open the app and make the search action. And yeah, maybe some other steps, additional steps. Like the main difference that use cases, it's something more huger than test case, something more not described in details. Yeah, test cases is like a small part of the functionality is described. Yeah.
I think I can also add here that this case is more related to specific feature, while a use case may cover like several features because it
Mm.
covers a flow which customer might use from the starting point to the end point. Okay, thank you. I think that's good for this question. Now, next one. Why does this case have expected result on each step? Shouldn't it have on one expected result for which the test case was created?
Uh, yeah, it's a good question because I know that on different projects there's different approach for this, but based on my experience, it's better to use and write expected result to each step for the test cases. First of all, it's more correctly from the uh, meaning of the test case. And the second, yeah, it's about the specific functionality, and we need to exactly understand that all flow is correct, all check is correct, that we navigate to the proper page. Because, for example, sometimes, yeah, we can get to the needed page, but it can be done via different ways. And if you are not mentioned the exit page, the real page or real a place where you where you want to see and to be, yeah, you can miss this case, some acceptance criteria, and yeah, that's why it's better to make expected result for the each step.
Yeah. And also help to explain like other people, especially new people to the team, well, what they should see.
Yeah, sure. And also, if you need, for example, sometimes it's also possible that developers can help you with some execution, for example, and this detailed description and expected results can help them to understand the check the case. It's yeah, in general.
And if they're doing everything right. Yep. Okay, I think it's good for this one. Thank you. And next question. So, which test documentation type would you recommend for the team with API testing only?
Mhm. Um, I can say based on my experience, I usually used test cases for that, but I think it's need to see the exact verification of the story. Yeah, usually used the test. I usually use test cases for the verification, but yeah, and I can recommend that. But yeah, need to see.
I think it also depends on the current scope of the testing and how close we are to release,
Yeah.
and also clients' requirements. Because I've seen like that you can also use cases with API,
Hmm.
a, a sequence of calls one after another, which can imitate use case testing in UI, and that also could be useful, especially if there is no UI testing at all on this project.
Yeah.
So it depends.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. The next question is Azure DevOps really used for manual testing as a test management tool or for the test automation only?
As I know, Azure DevOps is used by manual team also, and yeah, for automation. Unfortunately, I don't have didn't have an experience with Azure DevOps, but I know yeah the colleagues which from the manual K pool which I used Azure DevOps as test case management tool on their projects.
Okay. I think a tool is a tool. The most important thing is how you use it and if it's useful
Yeah.
to you specifically. Yeah. Okay, thank you. But then I think we can go to the next question. What is role of traceability metrics in testing? A good question.
Yeah, it's a good question regarding the traceability matrix. So the main aim of the traceability matrix to check that we cover all our requirements in the story by the cases. How it can be looks like you can name the story name and to match with test cases which are covered this story. It helps us to understand that we cover all story by needed scenarios and cases. That's why, yeah, and we don't miss on something.
Yeah, basically, it's kind of a tool, a managing tool that helps test lead to overview what exactly we have tested, if we have tested everything we wanted at this
Yeah.
specific stage, yeah, and yeah, provide proper test result report. Okay, thank you. And at this moment, we don't have any more questions from the audience. And if you don't mind, I can ask you maybe one or two questions from my side, just in case someone else will add any questions. Or if not, we'll wrap up after that. So I just wanted to ask you, like, what is the test case type which you have used maybe the less or not as much as you wanted, but maybe you have regretted that you didn't start to use it earlier. Maybe understood it was so like so cool in a meeting that you should have started earlier.
Um, I think that I used less use cases,
Hmm.
uh, but uh, but I understood that yeah, as I said, yeah, we had a project where we need to verify end-to-end flow, and yeah, we had such a project that we started to do it via test cases, but after that we switched to the use cases and understood that yeah, it was something that we needed to do at first, yeah, to get more time. I think that in general we need to include use cases as a type mostly for the all integration stages on the project to understand that we really do our up working correctly and understand the whole flow for this. I think, yeah, and use cases.
Yeah, I agree. Personally, I also really do like use cases. Well, so I totally understand your feelings on this and agree with you. Okay, and another small question from my side, if you don't mind. So, what is a test documentation more often requested by client?
Um, Often they asked about test cases, but as I know, they like ask the test cases, but sometimes we have different understanding of
Mhm.
what they want to see. That's why, yeah, it's better to align your expectations during the strategy and test plan implementation or before the some UAT testing and so on. For example, yeah, I had such discussion during yeah my current project when it starts. Yeah, we agreed with like clients that yeah we will share our cases, but they want to see use cases. That's why yeah we understand that we need to write some additional for that.
Yeah, it seems that it's always a point or to clarify what exactly
Yeah.
was meant
What-
because test cases is by test cases you can mean like anything, basically any kind of test documentation.
yeah.
Yeah, so but everyone sees test cases differently. Okay, good. Thank you so much for answering the questions. And looks like there are no more questions, and we are ready to wrap up. So, Karina, let me thank you again for sharing your valuable experience. That was very, very useful. A nice conversation we have here. So, thank you.
Thank
And
you.
and dear listeners, thank you for supporting this event. Stay tuned, join ProQuality community in social networks, and may your test always be flawless. Bye bye.